Nobody will waste their time on your birthday. My mother wrote in our family chat, and everyone supported her. I just replied, okay. That same day, I canceled their apartment lease, which was $2,500 a month, and closed our joint trust account. I closed everything and cut them off. The day my mom told me that no one would be wasting their time on my birthday, something inside me snapped. It was a simple message in our family group chat. I had asked if anyone wanted to have dinner or come over for cake. Nothing crazy. Just a normal birthday, the kind that doesn't feel like a reminder that you're completely alone, even when you're surrounded by family. My mom responded first. No one's wasting their time on your birthday. The message sat there like a stain for a few minutes. Then the others began to like it. A thumbs up from my sister, a heart from my dad, a laughing emoji from my cousin. No one said anything else. No one even hesitated. I just said, okay, and closed the app. 15 minutes later, I logged into the management portal for the apartment lease I had been paying for the past year. $2,500 a month right out of my account so my parents could live stress-free while they got back on their feet. I canceled the lease without a second thought. I then logged into the trust account I had set up when they claimed they needed a safety net. I drained it and closed it. Took me less than an hour to render them completely powerless. The only person I called was my grandfather. When he answered, I just said, I'm done. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't have to. He just said, good. Let them see what real life is like. I felt the weight lift off my chest. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. The results came faster than I expected. 3 days later, I started getting texts. At first polite, then angrier, then direct threats about how I was abandoning my family, about how blood is thicker than water. Calls at 2 a.m. that I didn't return. Long Facebook rants tagging me and painting me as a heartless villain. I didn't respond to any of them. 2 weeks after I pulled the plug, they were evicted. I didn't even hear from them. My cousin texted me and said, dude, your parents are moving in with Lisa. They're pissed. Apparently, they showed up at her house with 3 garbage bags full of clothes and no idea what to do next. Aunt Lisa wasn't thrilled either, but nobody wanted to look like the bad guy in front of the rest of the family. Meanwhile, I went about my life as if they didn't exist. But Grandpa wasn't done. He told me, you've given them a little taste of reality. Now it's time to serve the whole damn meal. We started talking every night, working out the details. Grandpa had a list of things they still depended on without even realizing it. I learned how deep their laziness and entitlement ran things even I hadn't noticed while I was too busy trying to keep them afloat. If they thought losing their apartment was bad, they were about to find out what real rock bottom looked like. The first part of the plan was simple. Cut off anything that made their lives easier. I had co-signed my dad's truck loan a few years back when his credit was in the toilet. Stupid, I know. I hadn't thought about it in a while because he swore he was making the payments. Grandpa suggested I look into it. When I did, I found out he hadn't made a payment in 3 months. So I called the finance company, explained that I was the co-signer, and told them where the truck was parked. 2 days later, it was gone. Repossessed right out of Lisa's driveway while my dad was inside watching TV. He texted me at least 15 times that night, alternating between begging and threatening. I didn't answer any of them. Grandpa said, that's good. Let him stew in it. Meanwhile, my mother was trying to be clever. She called one of my old high school friends, someone she hadn't spoken to in years, and tried to guilt her into talking some sense into me. I found out when my friends sent me screenshots of the messages. It was all the same garbage about how family sticks together and how Mike owes us everything. I sent a screenshot of it to Grandpa. He just replied, keep the receipts. You'll need them. By the 3rd week, things had gotten worse for them. And Lisa was tired of them eating her food, using her car without asking, and generally treating her house like a hotel. She began to hint that they should look for other options. But they had nothing. No savings, no credit, no friends willing to take them in. And they still thought I would cave. They didn't realize I was just getting started. Grandpa helped me dig a little deeper into the things they were still hanging on to buy a thread. It turned out that Mom had been using my address for her business license, one she barely used, but kept because it made her look good online. I reported it. License revoked. Dad had a P.O. box that I was still paying for because he needed it for important mail. Closed it. They started getting rejection letters, late notices, bounce bills. Every door they tried to open slammed shut in their faces. It all led to what Grandpa called the pressure point. The moment when desperate people stop thinking clearly and start making really, really bad decisions. I didn't have to wait long. Late one night, about a month after it all started, I came home from work to find the back door to my house wide open. Lights were on inside. It didn't even feel real at first. I walked in and there was my dad in the living room going through my drawers like a man. When he saw me, he didn't even try to pretend. He just said, "Give me what's mine." I grabbed my cell phone and called the cops right in front of him. He lunged at me once, but he wasn't fast enough. The police were already nearby, and when they showed up, they handcuffed him to the ground as he screamed about how I was ruining his life. Watching him get hauled away was probably the most satisfying moment of my entire existence. Grandpa called it justice done. Dad ended up with a burglary charge and 3 months in jail. The judge didn't buy any of his soba stories about misunderstandings. There were too many witnesses, too much evidence against him. Mom refused to talk to me after that. She posted long rants on Facebook, tagged every relative she could think of, and basically wrote me out of her life with paragraphs of insults. I didn't respond. I didn't even read most of it. As far as I was concerned, my family, except for Grandpa, no longer existed, and it felt damn good. After my dad was dragged away in handcuffs, you think things would finally settle down. Instead, it was like lighting a fuse. For a few weeks, there was silence. No texts, no phone calls, no angry online rants from my mom. It was eerie. I half expected them to show up at my door again, but nothing happened. It almost felt like I had finally scared them away. Grandpa didn't buy it. He told me, "Silence doesn't mean peace. It means they're plotting something." And he was right. I found out from a coworker that my mom had been making phone calls around town, telling anyone who would listen that I had framed my dad. According to her version, I had set a trap, called the cops for no reason, and destroyed their lives out of spite. She left out the part where my dad was caught rifling through my drawers like a junkie looking for cash. Not that facts ever mattered to her. Soon, distant relatives and old family friends began contacting me. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had an opinion. Messages ranged from "maybe you should make peace" to "how could you do this to your own parents?" It was hilarious. Really, these people had no idea what was really going on. They just bought the version where my parents were helpless little victims. Grandpa thought it was funny, too. He said, "Let them cry in front of the whole damn town. They'll still be broke and homeless when they're done." Meanwhile, their situation was getting worse after the arrest and Lisa's patience was wearing thin. Mom sat around all day demanding rides, eating her food, blaming everyone but herself. Lisa wasn't having it. After 2 weeks of non-stop freeloading, she packed my mom's crap into a few garbage bags, dumped them on the front lawn, and told her she had an hour to leave. No arguments, no discussion, just get out. Mom ended up begging Jason, my second cousin, to let her crash on his couch. Jason lived in a tiny downtown apartment surrounded by abandoned strip malls and liquor stores. His place smelled of old Chinese takeout and mold. She went from an upscale apartment I paid for to sleeping under a broken ceiling fan on a torn couch that smelled like wet socks. She still didn't see the irony. Grandpa called it justice done without us lifting a finger. But he wasn't done. He said it was time to make sure they stayed down permanently. As it turned out, Grandpa had set up a family trust years before. It wasn't a crazy amount of money, maybe enough to buy a decent house or start a business, but it was significant. Back when things were normal, my parents were named in it. They would have gotten a share when Grandpa died. They would have. That afternoon, Grandpa and I sat down with his lawyer, a no-nonsense woman who seemed to know exactly what kind of family we were dealing with. We updated the trust. Officially, legally, my parents were cut out. Every penny was redirected to me and a few cousins who had actually stayed loyal. It wasn't petty. It was survival. Grandpa didn't want a dime of his hard work to go to people who had spent their whole lives taking. The best part, we didn't just update the documents quietly. The lawyer had official letters sent to my parents, big manila envelopes that they had to sign. Inside was a complete breakdown of the trust update, complete with highlighted sections showing exactly how and why they were being disinherited. There was no room for confusion, no loopholes, no chance to talk their way back in. When they opened those letters, all hell broke loose. Mom blew up my phone with voicemails full of screaming, crying, bargaining. The messages ranged from, "Please, we're still family," to, "You'll regret this for the rest of your life." I didn't respond to any of them. Then came the fake apologies. The "we miss you" texts. The "maybe we can get together and talk things out." Grandpa said, "You don't build a bridge back to a house you've already burned down." He was right. There was nothing left to salvage. I focused on my own life, upgraded my locks, installed security cameras, finished decorating my apartment with all the little things I had put off for years because I was too busy paying the bills. Meanwhile, they continued to spiral downward, and Grandpa had one last move planned that would make sure they could never rebuild. And this one was personal. Grandpa always believed that lessons only stick when they hurt, and he wasn't done teaching. About a month after we cut them off completely, he called me one morning and told me to meet him at the old community center downtown. I didn't ask any questions. With Grandpa, you didn't have to. You just showed up. When I got there, the parking lot was packed. It was some kind of local fundraiser, small-town politics, charity auction, that kind of thing. But everybody who was anybody showed up at these events, not because they cared about the cause, but because they cared about being seen. That's when I saw them. My mom and Jason huddled in the back trying to blend in. Mom was wearing the same sagging jeans and pulled-up hoodie I'd seen her in during her last Facebook meltdown. Her hair was pulled back in a greasy knot. She looked like a ghost of the woman who used to bark at waitresses when her coffee wasn't hot enough. I kept my distance. I still didn't know why Grandpa had dragged me here. Not until he took the stage. He moved slowly now, but the second he took the microphone, the room went dead silent. Everyone respected him, even people who barely knew him. He stood there with a calm smile and started talking about legacy, about how some people waste what they are given and others build something worth leaving behind. And then he dropped it. He announced a huge donation. $10,000 in my name. Not the family name. Not shared credit, just me. On the big projector screen behind him, my name was written in huge bold letters. The message couldn't have been clearer if he had slapped my mother in the face. He talked about hard work, about loyalty, about knowing who deserves to inherit the future. He never mentioned my parents by name. He didn't have to. Everyone in the room already knew the whole story. I caught a glimpse of my mother in the back, her face frozen somewhere between anger and shame. Jason whispered something to her and she ran for the door without even pretending to smile for the crowd. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just watched her walk away the same way she had left me to fend for myself over and over again when it suited her. After the event, Grandpa and I sat in his truck for a while just watching people shuffle out. He lit a cigarette, even though he wasn't supposed to smoke anymore, and said, "This is what they deserve, Mike. Every bit of it." And he was right. That night felt like the final nail in the coffin for them. Whatever shreds of social standing they had left were gone. People stopped returning their phone calls. No one invited them anywhere. Even the relatives who had half-heartedly defended them before stopped pretending. But the worst part wasn't the public humiliation. It was what came next. After Mom got kicked out of Jason's apartment, something about unpaid rent she forgot to mention, she started couch surfing with even more distant relatives, people she hadn't spoken to in years. She went from being the queen bee to the family charity case, begging for leftovers and bus rides. My father came out of prison looking a wreck. Skin sagging, hair thinner, teeth worse. He didn't come straight to me. Not at first. First, he tried to go back to Ennis's. She slammed the door in his face. Then he tried couch surfing with some old buddies, but they were smarter than him. Most of them wouldn't even open the door, so he started lurking. One afternoon, I pulled into my driveway and saw him standing across the street, just watching. He didn't say a word, didn't wave, didn't move. He just stared like he was trying to remember the life he no longer had. I didn't panic. I didn't call the cops. I didn't even go inside. I just stood there in the driveway with my arms crossed, staring right back at him. It was a long 5 minutes, and then he turned and walked away, shoulders slumped like he was carrying the whole world on his back. Grandpa called me later that night. He didn't ask how it went. He just said, "You're free now, Mike. You finally are." And for the first time in my life, I believed him. But that wasn't the end. There was one last confrontation, one choice I had to make. A door I could close forever or leave open. I thought it was over. I thought they'd finally gotten the message. But people like my parents don't just go away. They wait, stewing in their own misery until they think they've found an opening. It happened one Sunday morning. I was out back fixing one of the gates when I heard a knock at the front door. A slow, faint knock, as if whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they wanted to be there. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a second, I thought about ignoring it, but something told me to go see. Standing on my front porch were my mom and dad. I hardly recognized them. Mom had dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a tight, greasy bun. She was clutching a plastic grocery bag as if it held everything she owned. Dad looked even worse. Thin, hunched over, as if he could barely stand up straight. His clothes were stained and mismatched. His eyes, the ones that used to be so full of self-righteous anger, looked hollow. They didn't speak right away. They just stood there, shifting from foot to foot like children sent to the principal's office. Finally, Mom mumbled something about needing a place to stay for a while. She said it like it was no big deal, like she was asking for a cup of sugar. Dad didn't say anything. He just kept his eyes on the floor as if he knew he had no right to even be standing there. It would have been easy to slam the door in their faces. Part of me wanted to. Part of me had been waiting for this moment for years. The moment they would come crawling back, broken, and see me standing strong. But there was a small, stupid part of me that hesitated. Because no matter what they'd done, they were still my parents. Still the people who gave me life, at least biologically. Grandpa's words echoed in my head. You don't owe them anything, Mike. Blood doesn't erase betrayal. I stood there for a long time just staring at them. They didn't even try to plead. Maybe they knew it wouldn't work. Finally, I said the only thing I could choices. Now live with them. I closed the door, locked it, walked away. Behind the door, I could hear Mom starting to cry. Not the dramatic, performative sobbing she used to do when she wanted something. Real crying. The kind that sounded like something inside her was finally breaking. I didn't go back. I didn't look out the window. I didn't open the door. They stayed there for a while. I could hear them moving around on the porch, but eventually they left. They dragged their cheap grocery bag with them like it was all they had left in the world. I didn't hear from them again for weeks. I found out later that they bounced around from motel to motel before finally ending up in a shelter 2 towns over. No more comfortable couches, no more family to suck on, no more money, and me. I was finally living my life without the weight of them dragging behind me. I traveled, bought a new car, started dating again, laughed more. Grandpa said it best as we sat on his porch one evening watching the sun sink low over the fields. He said, "Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let those who are trying to drown you go under." And that's exactly what I did. 3.5 years later, a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address, no stamp, just tossed in like trash that someone was too lazy to throw away properly. At first, I thought it was junk. I almost didn't open it, but something about it felt wrong. The paper was cheap, the handwriting crooked and messy, as if whoever wrote it was shaking. I recognized it right away. It was from my mother. The letter wasn't long. She didn't waste time apologizing or explaining everything she'd done. She didn't ask for my forgiveness. She didn't even ask for help. She just told me one thing. Dad was dead. He had died 2 months earlier, slumped over a plastic table in a rundown shelter cafeteria, still wearing the same tattered jacket he came out of prison in. No one noticed for nearly an hour. He was cold and alone when they finally found him. There was no service, no obituary. They cremated him in a city facility with no family present and buried his ashes in a communal grave with a number instead of a name. She wrote that she was living in a battered mobile home behind a boarded-up gas station near the old 68 bypass. No heat, no water. She lived on canned food from a food pantry and washed in a cracked sink with rainwater she collected in buckets. And then, at the bottom of the page, there was one last line that stayed with me longer than anything else. You won, Mike. Every time you drive by, remember I'm still here waiting, watching, dying slower than he did. No love, Mom. No apology, just pure venom. I folded the letter in half and threw it in the trash without a second thought. No hesitation, no guilt. They made their choices. They built the grave they were buried in with their own hands. Grandpa had been right all along. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. It doesn't mean love. It just means biology, a technicality. I never went looking for her. Never answered. I drove by the 68 bypass many times over the years, sometimes on purpose. Sometimes in the distance, I'd see a rusted mobile home sitting like a rotting carcass behind the trees, its windows taped up with garbage bags. I never slowed down. I never stopped. I let the past rot right where it belonged. Meanwhile, my life went on. Grandpa had left me everything. The house, the land, the savings account no one knew about. I rebuilt it all from scratch. I renovated the house, expanded the land, started a business with money I earned without anyone's help. I lived for myself for the first time in my life. I traveled. I fell in love. I built something real. Sometimes people would ask me why I wasn't in touch with my family. I would just smile and say, not everyone deserves a seat at your table, no matter how long you shared a last name. One night a few years later, I was sitting on my porch with a beer in my hand, staring out at the fields that Grandpa had tilled with his own hands. The stars were bright and the world felt bigger and cleaner than it ever had when I was trapped under its weight. I thought of my parents just for a second. Then I raised my glass to the night and drank to their memory. A memory that couldn't hurt me anymore. They were ghosts now, and I had finally stopped believing in them. Update. It happened at a barbecue. One of those neighborhood things where everyone brings a dish and pretends not to judge each other's lawn care or bank accounts. I usually kept quiet at these things, stuck to a beer in a corner. But that night, a guy named Andrew struck up a conversation with me. We talked about business, trucks, the city. Nothing deep, nothing dangerous. Then he casually asked, "Do you have family here?" It was such a normal question, so innocuous. Most people would have rambled on about cousins, holidays, funny childhood stories. I took a slow sip of my drink and looked up at the darkening sky where the stars were just beginning to blink awake. "I used to," I said. "Now I just have ancestors." Andrew laughed, thinking I was making some strange joke. I smiled too, but mine didn't reach my eyes. He didn't ask anything else after that, and that was fine with me. Some stories aren't meant to be told. Some ghosts are better left buried with no headstones to mark where they fell.